Okay, so we've created our graphical user interface in Visual Basic, and now I need to code the 4 buttons for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division so that they function when the user clicks on them. Within the graphical user interface, I'm simply going to go to my first button, which is the addition button. I'm going to take the pointer control, and I'm simply going to double click on the button. And that will bring me into the code editor, and my form has kind of disappeared. Notice there's a couple tabs up here at the top. I'm looking at the VB code for Form 1, and over here is the Design tab. And if I want to go back to my interface, I can click that tab, and I'm back there. And now I can click this tab and go back to the code. Now, in the code here, it's created some statements for us already. And I'd like you to think of these as bookends. So we have an outer set of bookends, one that says public class form 1. That was the name of our form. And then it's bookended by an end class. Within that, we have a private sub btn add underscore click. Now, our btn add was the name of that button, and this is going to be the code for a click event. And so it gave us a name of a sub procedure, that's what sub stands for, named btn add underscore click. Now, in this video, I'm not expecting you to understand all the code. I want you to understand the process we go through in writing code. So when I double-clicked the btn add button, it created this private sub statement and the corresponding bookended end sub statement. Now, if we look a little more at this private sub, after the name of the sub procedure, there's a set of parentheses. And for now, I'm going to ignore the set of parentheses, but I'm just going to tell you they're very important. I'm going to scroll over to the right-hand side and look at what comes after the parentheses. And I see here there's the word handles. This named sub-procedure is going to handle an event. The event it's handling uses what we call dot notation. It's the name of the object, in this case btn add, dot or period, and the name of the event. The event here is called click. When the user clicks on that button, it's going to do something, and the code it's going to execute is what's between the private sub and the end sub. So now to code this button, we simply have to add some code between those two statements. So I'm going to click between private sub and end sub. I'm going to type dim a, b, c as double. A equals C dbl val txt first num dot text. And we'll close my parentheses so that for every left parenthesis I have a right parenthesis. B equals C dbl val txt second num dot text. C equals A plus B, and txt solution dot text equals C dot toString. That's the code for the button. Now let me explain briefly what this is doing. This first line, dim ABC as double, is setting aside some spaces in memory that I'm going to refer to as A, B, and C. These are variables. And they're going to hold a value that is of a data type called double. That's a numeric value that may consist of decimal numbers. This next line of code takes whatever text has been typed into txt first num, whatever the user has entered in that text box. I'm converting it to a numeric value and assigning it to a double data type and putting that in the memory location that I've labeled A. I do the same thing for the text that's in txt second num, converting that from text to a numeric value called double, and I'm putting that in the memory location I've defined as B. Then I simply add A and B together and place that in the memory location called C. And then finally in the solution text box, txt solution, I'm going to set that text property to the value of C, converting it from a double value to a string. Like I said, at this point I don't expect you to understand everything that's going on, but that's what's happening. So now I've written my code for that button. Let's test it. Up here on the button bar, as we saw earlier, there's this little button in the center called Start Debugging. That's going to check my code, and if everything's okay, it's going to compile it and create an executable file that's going to bring up. So I will do that. So it's now compiling, and there's my executable. So if I click the plus sign, it puts 17 here in the solution. If I change this to 25 and 16 plus sign, I get 41. So that is working. My button is now functional. The other buttons don't do anything. We haven't coded those yet. So I'm going to code those buttons. I'm going to go back to my form. I'm going to click the Design tab. And again, if I just double click on the minus or subtraction button, it's going to create the private sub and end sub. And then the code that will execute when that button is clicked is what I'm going to type in. Now, the code is going to be almost identical to what I have up here. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to copy this and paste it. And the only thing I need to do is change the minus sign. I'm going to do that for the multiplication as well. Since I already have the clipboard, I can just paste. And I'm going to change the plus, this time to an asterisk, which is the multiplication operator in Visual Basic. That's going to multiply A times B. Now I'm going to do the last one a little bit differently. So instead of double clicking, up here at the top of my code window, I can choose on the left-hand side a drop-down of all of my objects and controls. What I want to code is the BTN division button. So I'm going to select that button. And then over on the right-hand side, there's a drop-down that shows all the different types of events associated with that button. Notice there are a whole lot of events here. The one we've been using is the click event. And so I'm simply going to choose click. And notice it does the same thing for me as if I double-click on that button. I get a private sub, BTN division underscore click procedure with an end sub statement. And again, I'm just going to paste in my code. And here, I'm going to change the plus sign to a /, which is the division operator. So I now have 4 pieces of code in here, one for each of my 4 buttons. And I'm going to compile it and see if they work. So we saw the add button worked. We got 17 there. If I subtract 5 from 12, we get 7. If I multiply, I get 60. And if I divide, I'm getting 2.4. Now, just so you can see this works, if I put in a decimal value, and I add together, I'm going to get a decimal value here of 18.52. Subtract, multiply, and divide. Now already I can see a slight problem here in that when I divide some decimals, I might get a very long decimal number and it may not fit in my text box. So that might be something I want to come back later and make a change to, and that'd be the process of really debugging. I'm not changing an error in this case, but I am going to maybe improve my project somehow by either formatting this code or maybe making this text box larger. That's the methodology that we use in coding a Visual Basic project. I'm going to come back to my application, Go to the File menu, and I want to choose Save All.